Hi, my name is Anthony, and today we'll be looking over my A1 literature video log. Today, we will look at 5 unique yet interlinked texts that teach students about empathy, identity, and the power of narrative. The studies of literature, poetry, drama, and film enables us to examine how young people deal with relationships, culture, and self-discovery. Firstly, we will touch on the novel that I decided to focus on, which was my YA Australian novel from the last 3 years. And it was I'm Not Jessica Chen by Anne Liang, publicised in the 28th of January 2025, with a year level focus of Year 8. I'm Not Jessica Chen provides Year 8 students with a modern, culturally relevant story that examines resilience, identity, and imposter syndrome surrounding family expectations. Adolescent experiences of voice and belonging are closely associated to the protagonist's battle to define herself in the face of cultural stereotypes and labels. Its Australian YA setting encourages critical empathy and intercultural understanding, which is a general capability, while allowing students to explore a variety of viewpoints, especially those related to migration and identity, supporting the cross-curriculum priority of Asia and Australia's engagement with Asia, highlighting cultural identity and belonging. The book fits in with the Year 8 curriculum's emphasis on examining how writers portray social and cultural values and how readings can either support or contradict these standards, with a focus in the LEO1 and LEO5 substrand. Effective literacy analysis goes beyond simple comprehension and incorporates inferring, questioning, connecting, and synthesizing, as Quinn and Driver point out. The framework found in the course textbook lends itself well for this novel. For example, students can infer the protagonist's conflicted emotions through figurative language rather than explicit description, can question the construction and reinforcement of cultural stereotypes, and relate and connect these struggles to both personal contexts and broader social discussions about identity. The ability to synthesize these concepts across chapters facilitates students to form a dynamic, layered interpretation, proving that readers actively create meaning rather than passively absorbing it. And here are some annotated examples from the novel where readers could infer, question, and synthesize some meaning out of this insert alongside various examples throughout the book, which we could touch on in my lesson plan. So, how? A lesson plan could start with a teacher modeled annotation highlighting key sections in which Jessica defies attempts to identify her, emphasizing the novel's use of first person narrative and fluctuating tone and pacing. One example of this fluctuating tone is here in my annotations. So in this scene, it starts as a very appraisal. She's receiving an email for an award, and just abruptly you flip over to the next page, and that top line, I know what you've done. So yeah, that completely flips the tone of the scene, and this is just one of many examples of this throughout the novel. Following that, students could be guided to recognize narrative devices like dialogue and symbolism, such as the repeated use of masks or mirrors throughout the novel, as a means of creating meaning. Students would eventually progress towards literary analysis through guided discussion as they explore challenging perspectives and drawing parallels to their own experiences through group reading circles. Inspired by our relatable protagonist, students can synthesize themes across genres through post-chapter reflection exercises, including personal diary entries on identity, or comparison responses that connect this novel with real-world media representations of migrant youth. I Am Not Jessica Chen enables Year 8 pupils to develop their personal voice and interpretive skills, which is in line with the curriculum's emphasis on examining cultural identity representations, while including explicit comprehension methods in that LEO2 substrand. In this sense, it offers students a scaffolded approach to becoming more independent, critical readers alongside access to a meaningful and captivating text. The poem that I decided to focus on in this assignment was My Country. The author was Dorothy McKellar, and it was first published in 1908. And as we flick through my annotations, I guess the main thing that drew me to this poem was the cross-curriculum priority of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Island perspectives. So she's basically throughout the novel just, really personifying the land, and a great example of use of metaphor and symbolism and contrasting to paint a romanticised picture of the Australian land and the Indigenous land that we walk on every day. My Country by Dorothy Mackellar is an excellent text that can successfully be studied in middle school English due to its vivid imagery, emotive tone, and connection to students, developing sense of self and place in the world. Living on Indigenous land, whether students feel entrenched in one place or are struggling with relocation and change, many teenagers can resonate with the poem's strong affinity to place and land. With a focus on the cross-curriculum priority Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander perspectives, in a culture that is becoming more multicultural and environmentally sensitive, the romanticised portrayal of Australia also challenges students to consider and investigate their own relationship with Australia and the Australian environment and their own national identity. Students throughout the middle years are developing in their ability to read critically and in their awareness of how texts may influence cultural perception. My Country is a great starting point to examine how language, particularly poetical elements including rhythm, metaphor, and repetition, inspire emotional responses. Additionally, it provides an opportunity to critically examine which stories of Australia are emphasised and which are suppressed, particularly when paired with Aboriginal viewpoints on the land. This parallel fosters critical thinking and cross-cultural comprehension. My Country may be used in the classroom as a way to communicate identification on a personal and national level. Students can examine how Mackellar creates a unique portrayal of the Australian countryside via the use of metaphor, contrast, and imagery. This immediately relates to the substrand LAO2, which invites students to reflect about the ways in which meaning is shaped by vocabulary and figurative language. After that, students can compose original My Country poems that relate location to personal experience, encouraging introspection and creative writing. This text is well suited for dramatic reading or spoken word performances for the development of oral language. By practicing tone, tempo, and emphasis, students can gain confidence in their speaking and listening skills. In order to investigate how delivery alters interpretation, students may experiment with tone, rhythm, and emphasis. This complements that LY06 substrand, which is devoted to organizing, practicing, and giving oral presentations to various audiences. This promotes persuasive delivery and a more thorough understanding of the poem's emotional terrain. Finally, the poem invites critical reflection on depictions and viewpoint. In order to consider whose voices are reflected and whose are not, students may contrast this piece with other poems or texts that offer various perspectives on country, including works such as Inside My Mother, produced by First Nations poet Ali Cobby Eckermann in 2015. This engages the LEO1 substrand, which entails understanding how context influences representations and how texts reflect varying values and attitudes. Such exercises not only build critical reading abilities, but also foster empathy and cultural awareness, making the work particularly relevant for adolescents. Okay, so next we'll focus on the picture book that I chose in this assignment. So I decided to focus on The Truck Cat by Deborah Franco and Danny Snell, produced in 2024. And my interest for selecting this text was that it was the National Simultaneous Story Time for this year. And through my own work as an SSO, I actually experienced and got a chance to read this book to a group of Year 5-6 students and saw how much it really lit up their imagination and their enjoyment of the book. So inspired by that experience, I've decided to introduce this as my Year 7 piece. The Truck Cat provides a sophisticated, multimodal tale that resonates with the emotional and social landscape of adolescent readers. Yacub's experience as a migrant truck driver and his relationship with Tinker reflect the identity development, interpersonal mobility, and quest for belonging that are all vital components of early adolescence. These themes complement the Australian curriculum emphasis on intercultural awareness by enabling students to reflect on both local and global perspectives on resilience and displacement, with a focus in the LEO5 and LAO1 substrand. As taught by Quinn and Driver in the course material, from a visual language perspective, the text employs deliberate choices on representation, composition, colour scheme, body language and gaze, which are all examples of intentional representation choices used in the texts which produce certain ways of interacting with its characters and surroundings. Low-angled shots of Yacub, such as here in this annotated example, suggest tranquil resiliency, while warmer colours during friendship and colder tones upon separation direct audiences' emotions. Another example of this is in this page where they use a bird's eye view to basically dwarf and isolate Yakub as he gets separated from Tinker throughout the narrative. And one example of gaze is in this annotated example where the butterfly sort of guides the reader's eye through the scene as Tinker is chasing him through the page as he eventually gets lost from Yakub. Another example of this expert use of color was in this still where the sky is painted in a deep blue tone, conveying a sense of peace and stillness. In my own work as an SSO in a Year 5-6 classroom during National Simultaneous Storytime, this text proved to be engaging to a diverse group of learners in creative choice board activities ranging from mix it up story openings to inform them infographics, demonstrating its flexibility and appeal towards multimodal presentation, giving students freedom to express their own creative literacy, which was inspired by the LY06 substrand. One student connected the text events to their own migration story, illustrating the text potential for authentic and empathetic engagement. A Year 7 sequence may start with a modelled read aloud, following a peer-led, careful visual examination of a few chosen spreads, using meta-language including symbolism, framing, vector, and visual perspective to uncover meaning. And this would be very similar to the annotated examples that I've provided, and this could even become a resource for my future Year 7 students if we chose to focus on this Year 7 text. Using Quinn and Driver's fundamental ideas for picture building, students would annotate for composition, gaze, color symbolism, and backgrounding. Students might then compare their interpretations of pages in pairs or small groups before sharing their findings with the class, emphasizing the subjective nature of responding to visual text. To extend further, students may use their knowledge of composition and framing to convey mood and meaning in a comic book style storyboard that reimagines a significant passage in the book. In addition to strengthening their understanding of how visual text function, this creative assignment enables students to combine their analytical and expressive abilities. Students in Year 7 may develop critical literacy, multicultural understanding, and confidence while dealing with multimodal texts, with the Truck Cat's integration of careful reading, conversation, and creation. The drama that I decided to focus on throughout this assignment was Romeo and Juliet, with a focus in the Year 10 year level. Romeo and Juliet is an excellent middle school drama text, tackling timeless adolescent relevant topics such as passionate feelings, first love, identity, loyalty, and defiance of authority. For teenagers navigating relationships, independence, and moral decisions, these are all essential topics. The play is simultaneously realistic and thought-provoking, seeing as Romeo and Juliet's quick actions reflect teenage issues with agency and consequence. Folktales and fairy tales frequently rely on tropes such as disguise, strong emotions, and predictable plots, as Hickson points out. Through its masked bowl, intensified emotions of love and hate, and tragic arc, Romeo and Juliet reflect these patterns while also subverting the anticipated happy ending, which makes students consider how conventional narrative structures can be broken. Additionally, the text provides students a starting point for comprehending Shakespeare's ongoing impact on Western literature and performance. The play illustrates the way in which dramatic pieces may both reflect and question the values of their era, while also having resonance in modern settings through its language, structures, and ideas. The story's universal themes of family strife, forbidden love, and sad loss provide adolescents with a lens through which to view and reflect on both their personal experiences and more general societal problems. Romeo and Juliet is an effective teaching tool in English class as it enables learners to integrate careful reading with imaginative and performative responses. Students are able to examine how Shakespeare uses language, including metaphor, imagery, and dramatic irony, to depict conflict and love. So one example of how students could do this is, again, through my own annotations, where I've annotated the technique on one side and the how and the impact of this technique and how it builds key themes throughout the play. There is a clear connection between this and LAO2, which invites students to examine how language choices and vocabulary affect meaning. Similar to our in-class exercise in week 4, where we created our own Shakespearean insult and practiced different forms of delivery. Inspired by this in-class task, oral performances are another way that students can interact with the play. They can practice tone, speed, and intensity by reading out or acting out important passages, including the balcony or battle scenes. These activities relate to the LY06 substrand to plan, create, rehearse, and deliver spoken presentations. In addition, students could create imaginative adaptations of the play, such as adapting a scene to a contemporary setting, such as a high school soccer game. This enables students to work collaboratively and consider the ways in which context affects representation in that LEO1 substrand, producing their own Shakespeare-inspired scene. This potentially could increase engagement amongst learners showing no interest in drama. In addition to developing critical and creative thinking skills, this enables teenagers to consider how Shakespeare's themes of identity, love, and loyalty still apply to their own lives and today's society. Finally, the film that I decided to focus on was A Silent Voice, produced in 2017, which was originally a graphic novel adapted into a full feature-length film, and the original creator was Yoshitoki Oyama, and it was adapted by Naoko Yadama alongside Kyoto Animation. A Silent Voice follows Japanese high schooler Shoya Ishida as he seeks reconciliation with Shoko Nishimiya, his deaf classmate whom he previously spearheaded group bullying against, navigating guilt, social isolation, and the chance for redemption, highlighting the lasting effects of childhood action. A Silent Voice resonates strongly with adolescents through its exploration of themes of bullying, social exclusion, disability, and the search for forgiveness, all central issues to the adolescent experience. Through Shoya's redemption arc, the psychological effects of both perpetrating and experiencing bullying is demonstrated, opening space for students to reflect critically on empathy, resilience, and responsibility. Its appeals to adolescents lies in its depiction of the intricacies of empathy and identity, showcasing flawed characters who develop as a result of facing the repercussions of their choices. This is in line with the curriculum's emphasis on engaging texts that relate to the students' experiences and deepen their intercultural understanding. In keeping with the Asia's cross-curriculum goal, the film's Japanese cultural background enriches students' global literacy, introducing them to Eastern storytelling conventions, with the film acting as a lens to explore individual versus communal reactions to guilt and redemption. As noted by Quinn and Driver in Chapter 19, visual texts serve as purveyors of ideologies and values. In this case, the film places the audience in a position to sympathize with Shoko, object to prejudice, and acknowledge the transformational potential of compassion. And now I would like to introduce you to just a 15-second clip from the film, which highlights social isolation, metaphor, symbolism, anxiety, and my annotations touch on how these camera techniques apply the said themes and core values of the film. And more than just camera techniques, it's also sound design, and in this scene you can hear the muffled conversation and footsteps, which really highlight the isolation of our protagonist. In the classroom, students are offered a rich opportunity by A Silent Voice to deepen their understanding of film as a structured text rather than a leisurely form of entertainment. Based on Bartolo's appeal for authentic engagement with cinematic grammar, I could facilitate students' absorption of sequences by highlighting shot composition, sound design, and camera movement. For example, the repeated application of muted sound and silence throughout the film can be examined as a deliberate method to mimic Shoko's disability of deafness, provoking learners to consider how technical choices affect audience empathy. Students can be effectively engaged by completing a close analysis assignment. So yeah, basically as the outline I've got portrayed on the screen, I'll get them to pick one key theme from the film, which could be forgiveness, guilt, isolation, or another key theme from the film. And we would analyze 3 film techniques used to portray the chosen theme, which could be, for example, in my example, I've got the feeling of shame. So in our first body paragraph, we've got character isolation through close-up angles. In the second paragraph, we've got internal struggle captured through silence and muted soundscapes. And in the third paragraph, we've got mise en scene decisions like character placement or empty spaces. Students will employ meta-language to describe how these strategies create meaning and influence audience empathy. Students gain the ability to go beyond theme summarization and acquire the analytical accuracy required for Year 10 by concentrating on a particular emotions portrayal across a variety of techniques. Understanding choices made by developers to express ideas, which is that LY04 substrand. This is in line with Quinn and Driver's recommendation to study short sequences closely, allowing adolescents to narrow in on key techniques without becoming absorbed by the entire story. Students not only absorb stories through these texts, but also discover their own voices and viewpoints. They gain empathy, confidence, and cultural awareness while learning what it means to critically interact with the world around them. Here is a list of references I used throughout the assignment, and thank you for listening.